When you're so good at being different versions of yourself, you kind of wear so many masks that you don't even know what your face looks like.
We're trying to chase congruence. What you see is who I am.
It kind of felt like this crossroads of either choosing myself or continue playing the role, put your head down, and just keep grinding.
You do have the agency to make those changes. And frankly, we're accountable to make them.
I knew that this next season of my life was going to require a very different type of strength than I was used to.
Say a little bit more about that fight.
I just broke down into tears.
We put a lot of pressure on performers to say, this is when you perform and this is when you're a human.
You don't need to be anything. You don't need to do anything to be loved. You're loved just because you exist. Showing up from that place, everything around you starts to change.
Come on.
We've been taught everything except how to be human. I'm Miles Adcox, and this podcast turns raw experience into practical wisdom. So if you're ready to stop performing your life and start participating in it, you're in the right place. This is Human School.
If you've watched the show, you know I tend to be drawn to creatives. There's something about the way they tell the truth. Stories a lot of us feel, but don't always have the language for. And it's especially interesting in a place like Nashville, where a career can take off while you're still figuring out your voice as a human. Today's guest is someone who is not new to the Nashville songwriting scene. Signing her first publishing deal at 14, she's gone on to become a gold certified artist, named to CMT's Next Women of Country, and has toured with Keith Urban, Lainey, Mitchell Tenpenny, and my buddy Tyler Hubbard. What stands out is her willingness to say a little more, to step into the heart of modern storytelling and the harder, more honest parts of being human. And you can hear it in her music. There's a clarity to it, but also an openness. It doesn't feel overproduced emotionally. It feels lived in, like she's letting people in on the process, not just the outcome. So I'm looking forward to getting to know the person behind the songs, not just what she's writing, but what's shaping it. Please welcome Alana Springsteen.
Wow.
Welcome aboard, my friend.
Thank you for that. That was incredible. That just means so much to hear. Thank you. Really appreciate it.
Well, it was an easy one to write because I've been into your new project a little bit. And I'm a little biased towards people telling the truth and getting vulnerable about the hard parts of their story. But also, I feel like over the years, being so close to the creative community and especially kind of overlapping between my world, psychology, and your world, the music industry, I've gotten a critical ear on how people do it. And so not only do I love when people tell the truth in a vulnerable way, but I love when it's actually really good. And you've got a great project that's coming. Your sophomore album.
Yeah.
I'm so excited. We're going to get into that some.
Yeah.
But part of what we do on this show is we want to get to know the people behind the art. And I'd love to learn more about you. And I'm glad you chose us. I know you're doing lots of press and media, and so thank you for taking time to talk to us. And a lot of people, and I think, you naturally go there in this lane because I've heard you talk about it a little bit in some other press and then also throughout the lyrics in your work about mental health and wellness and how important it is to continue to reconcile the parts of our stories and the old messages and voices that may not be serving us so that we can kind of become who we are. We'll get into that. But also, I didn't want this to be a mental health show for obvious and maybe not obvious reasons. A lot of people know I'm in that space and they thought, well, yeah, you're the perfect guy to have a mental health show. And we end up talking about that a lot. But really, I want a human conversation that we'd have in a living room that doesn't feel like it's loaded with insider language, but that people can pick stuff out of it that might be helpful to their life, which ironically, you just wrote a whole album that you hope helps people. And I can see now in your intro and outro, which I can't wait to talk about. I'm getting ahead of myself.
No, I love it.
There's some beautiful prompts and affirmations and messages in there that feel therapeutic without, I can't think of a better frame. It was just good for me even to hear. And that's what I love about what you guys do. It's like, we'll take this whole set of information. How do you help a human unlock their story and become more attuned to who they are? And we do it in all these complicated ways with all kinds of concepts and models and language. And then you come through in this poetic, honest, and it hits you right in the heart. Why are you writing this work now? What's making you want to do this? Why do you want to say this? Why are you so drawn to hoping that this project helps people?
Wow. I mean, you covered so much there. I cannot wait to get into all of it. It's crazy. The past 2 years, have completely reshaped the person I am, I would say. And coming off of 20-something, my debut record, that album changed my life in a lot of ways. I mean, dreams were coming true, like getting to go on these incredible tours, my first gold record, like all of these highs. But in the midst of that, I felt just this tension between the person that I kind of was taught to be growing up, my past, and who I felt I was becoming and the life I was meant to live. And it kind of felt like this crossroads in a ways, of either choosing myself and like deciding to go on this journey and unpack all of these things and dig back into the way I was raised and unlearn some things and pull myself apart, or just continue playing the role, like don't be curious, put your head down and just keep grinding. And in a way, this album, like I had to fight to make it. I felt like, and I truly didn't feel like I had a choice. Like there was some life stuff that just came up that it was almost so in my face that I didn't have a choice but to process it. And music is always the way that I do that. It is my therapy. Before I started going to therapy, songwriting was my therapy. It was how I made sense of what was going on in my head and heart. And so I think in a way, this record just needed to be made. It's not like I went into it knowing what it was going to be. It was like one of the first songs I wrote for this record was Love Me Anyway. And I've always written about my life. I've always been vulnerable, but that reached a new level of vulnerability for me. It was the first time I had literally just sent like a brain dump in my notes app of all of these confessions and fears, all of that. I texted that to one of my co-writers, just like unedited, raw. I was just like, here's where I'm at. And that eventually became the chorus of that song.
Wow.
And I walked out of that room and I was like, I knew that this next season of my life was going to require a very different type of strength than I was used to. I was used to being like put together and, can handle anything steady. But for the first time, it was going to ask me to be messy and vulnerable and show the parts that I'm not so proud of. So, yeah, I mean, I look back on it and I did not know what I was getting into. Like there's a line in one of the songs on this record that was like, I might not have been brave if I would have known, but I opened the floodgates and I can't make them close. And that's so true. Like that's how I felt walking into it. I knew that it was going to be a journey, but I had no idea how much it would just reshape who I am.
Wow. It sounds like it's been transformational for you. You've mentioned a few things there where you talked about growing up in a town and the imprint and the programming that can come with that. And I think all of us have a backstory. So all of us grow up. It's interesting. Lately, I've had this slew of small town guests. And you're a small town outside Virginia Beach, right?
Yep, I am. I saw your episode with Nicole in small town in Kansas
Nicole and
as
I
well.
talked about small towns. Yeah. And so I just have some kinship because I grew up in a small town here in Tennessee.
Let's go. Yeah.
And there's a lot of beautiful things that can set a great foundation. I'm sure it's the same thing if you grew up in a big urban sprawl. But then inevitably, it doesn't matter how good your upbringing was. There's certain things that, I think as we grow, it's healthy to look back and deconstruct certain narratives and certain stories and figure out who we are as we start to detach from our upbringing. And it sounds like this album was very much a process for you in that way, because you used another word, like I had to fight to make this album.
Yeah.
And then you talked about specifically this one song about it's the most vulnerable thing you've ever done. Say a little bit more about that fight. What made you use that word, and why was it? Was it an internal conflict, or was it even the team around me might have pushed back a little bit on the creative side of where I was going and saying, and I know sophomore albums are so interesting because people are trying to kind of shape your brand, but you're trying to really become congruent with your brand. And it's neither of them are bad. It's just the way the industry kind of works. It's like, here's this person who's actually a product, and then how do we tell the story about the product? And then years later, and I have so much admiration. That's one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you, is you still represent a young generation. You started really young, but still in your 20s, it's a lot of times I'm talking to people in their 40s or 50s by the time they're finally asking these questions. And I'm like, you're asking them right now on your sophomore album. It's really cool. So you figured out already, because you said this in the beginning, there was a lot in there. I tend to ask like run-on questions, and sometimes I don't even know if there's a question.
I love it. But
I said a lot there, and I'll go back just to remind you about the part of you said it was a fight to make.
Yeah.
And could you say more about that?
Yeah, no, I think it felt like a fight in many ways. I think it's multifaceted. Going back to the way I was raised, I grew up in a really small town in Virginia Beach called Pungo, Virginia.
What's it called again?
Pungo.
Pungo.
It sounds as redneck as it is. Pungo.
Pungo.
And it's this really unique culture there. It's about 4,000 people, so pretty small.
That was the same size as my town.
Is that right?
4,500, something like that.
Yeah. So you get the picture. Everybody kind of knows everybody, pretty small community. I was like 5 minutes away from my local beach, which is mostly residential, like pretty quiet, just low key, and surrounded by cornfields and strawberry fields and just farmers and land, people that have been there for generations and generations. So it's half like surf, laid back beach culture and half like small town redneck farm culture.
Oh, that's neat.
Like as an example, like one of the farm stands is called Flip Flop Farmer. So that's like the perfect example of
what a great brand.
What it feels like there.
Is that a brand? Seems like I've seen Flip Flop Farmer somewhere.
It should be.
It should be.
I only know it as my local like farm stand down the street, but So super small town. Both my granddads are pastors. My granddad on my mom's side literally was called to be a preacher when he was like 35. Quit his college coaching football job and like went to seminary and literally built this church like with his hands, with his brothers from the ground up. So one of those preachers, like evangelical, fundamentalist, Southern Baptist.
They still pastoring or
yeah,
preaching? Okay.
Still pastoring, both of them. They're starting to retire now. Like they're both like 80, 85. So kind of starting to finally step back from the pulpit.
That's amazing. Still doing full-time preaching at that age. It's
pretty incredible. But yeah, my parents went to a Christian college, Liberty University. They met there, got pregnant with me outside of marriage in their like junior year. So that was a little bit of drama in the family. Moved back home with my...
I'm sure at Liberty too, it's probably quite a bit of drama.
They talk about it now. It's funny, like as your parents get older, as you get older, you start to have these like real conversations with your parents. And I think I'm getting more of a peek into like actually what their life was like. Like they were like, we were scared to go out and buy a pregnancy test.
Yeah.
Because like somebody was going to see us and find out. And it was just like so much judgment and like so much shame just like built into the way I was brought into the world.
And it's not a slight on Liberty. I've got a cousin that's on the junior on the football team there. But I'm just more talking about the cultural influence, especially that time period, you're right, was even different. But also it is a conservative Christian university. Mm-hmm. So I would imagine that was a big deal for that to happen.
Absolutely. So, I mean, dropped out, moved back home with my mom's parents, and they were 20 when they had me. So baby's raising a baby. And I was just brought up in this very tight-knit family, very close circle. I was homeschooled as well. So just didn't have a lot of life outside of family and faith and church. And there was a lot of beauty to that. Like I look back and the values I was raised with, the way it grounded me, the importance of family and just, who you are and believing in something bigger than yourself. All of that is so intrinsic to who I am, and I'm grateful for it. But along with that, I think comes like, there was a lot of like fear and shame and guilt that was at the core of the faith that I grew up with. And there was almost this like performative aspect to it where it's like, I know the boxes I've got to check. It's very black and white rules, go to church 4 times a week, cross your legs in church, be a good girl, don't do X, Y, and Z, no tattoos, don't drink, don't cuss, whatever. And I think I focus so much on that and just being the perfect daughter, being, I like a third parent to my younger brothers, almost like a therapist to my parents because they were so young. So I was almost like a friendship more growing up. And I never fully got to understand what faith meant for me. And like who I was. I just played this role like since I was 5, 6, 7 years old. And I always felt like I was an outlier. I was a little bit of a black sheep since I was like 7, 8, 9 years old, playing music, talking about wanting to go to Nashville, wanting to be a country music artist. Like there was never a plan B for me. So I think in that way, it was a little bit of a fight to live that life, like, kind of dragging my parents to Nashville. And they always supported me from day one. But it was so outside their comfort zone.
Sure.
And that makes sense, right? I look back and I'm like, it's a miracle that you guys even had the courage to do that, to pick up the family and move for your 14-year-old daughter who's like, I want to do music. Okay, what? This is crazy.
It's a huge part of your story, and I'm glad there's couple things. I'm glad you're thoughtfully reflecting on your history and the gifting part of it and the burden side of it. I spend a lot of my professional life helping people navigate that. Let's look back, let's look at our current circumstances, and let's look forward. And with every scenario, every situation, you're going to get some good and you're going to get some challenging. I had the same thing because I grew up in a very conservative evangelical denomination that's kind of a second cousin to Southern Baptist. It's really close. And a lot of my friends, so the Southern Baptist was just right down the street from the one I grew up in. And it was, you're exactly right. The structure gave me a foundation that I couldn't really shake, that I've never been able to shake. Even as I've, 15 years, I deconstructed a lot of my faith. And just like what you did, it sounds like, which is it went from rules to relationship.
Yeah.
And I wanted to go through, it's like, where did the rules serve me and where did they hold me back? Because I too picked up and carried a lot of, it's inevitable, because I do think structure is important, but sometimes structure can hyper-focus on the rules, which can hyper-focus on us getting it right. And we'll never get them all right, especially when you've got, in some cases, I feel like I don't want to be judgmental to what I grew up in, and I sometimes say it was very judgmental, but I guess I am. It was, there were some unrealistic expectations that I really, at my core, when I was in it, didn't fully align with it or understand it. And that was the one thing I never could get, was context. Why can't we use instruments when we're singing? Why do we have to sing a cappella? Why can't we swim together, mixed bathing? It was all these super conservative rules that I just didn't understand. And I would usually get like a half a scripture for context, but it didn't really say, here's why we're doing this.
Yes.
And so I was always the outlier too. I was the black sheep, which by the way, it's a great song.
Thank you.
Hear about why you wrote that. I was the last one I listened to on the way in was Black Sheep.
Is that right?
Really drawn to the title, but the song is great too. But I think there's a lot of people now, and I think it's important. That's why I wanted to camp out here for just a minute, if that's okay.
Of course, yeah.
That are thoughtfully reflecting about their faith journey, their imprint, how they were introduced to it, even though it was probably well-intended, and then finding out what parts of this really serve me well and what parts of this may not be helping me optimize my life and my relationships, and how can I bring those two worlds together. Really thoughtful, and I really affirm you for having done that work now. And then also the courage to write about it is huge. Because I think there's so many people that I see in my world that are stuck there. They think they're stuck emotionally, but they're actually stuck spiritually and feel a little trapped with what they think they should be doing, what they think they know, and what they probably haven't granted themselves permission to explore or experience just yet. And it sounds like you've walked that. The interesting part is you also can say, yeah, these parts were great. I really respect my grandfathers, what they're doing. And this part of it maybe wasn't the best. And I had to relook at that. And also about your parents having you really young. And then you're saying, but what courage it took to leave their life and to come with me to Nashville. At what age? Was it 14 when you guys moved?
I moved at 14.
That's wild.
Yeah, crazy.
What? Tell me about that experience, moving to Nashville at 14 with your parents.
Oh, gosh. Well, I mean, to your point, what you were just saying, I resonate with that so deeply. I think a big part of this whole journey for me has been curiosity. And that's kind of what you're talking about, right? Is like the why behind, why do we do what we do? Why do I believe what I believe? And growing up, there was such a lack of curiosity around me. And it was almost like, if you have doubts, if you have questions, that's a lack of faith. And what I've learned through this journey is like, actually, the word faith, the whole idea of faith means that there are doubts and there are questions just inevitably. And the beautiful journey that I've found is like pulling at those threads, like following those questions, trusting God with it, trusting yourself with it, and getting the answers and realizing that on the other side of that is a deeper level of faith. So I think that's been a really big aspect of the last 2 years for me and something I've learned. And also just empathy, like when you're talking about, the way things shaped you and, how your parents raised you, like everybody's human. They're lifing for the first time too. And there have been a lot of moments that we should dig into too, of like these songs allowing me to look at my parents as just like humans for the first time too. And like seeing each other as like being able to be empathetic toward each other's like experience, toward my mom's life experience, what she went through, how inevitably some of that was passed on to me, and how we can ultimately relate and connect through it. So I love that you like caught all of that in what I was saying too. I think you summed that up really beautifully.
You helped me slow it back down. I know we're both busy. I came in from something and you've got to go somewhere. Normally I don't even put a time limit on these. And so in my mind, I got ahead of myself and asked even after I said, let's camp out here for a minute. And then I asked you another question and you're like, well, wait a minute. Thank you for that. That's usually what I do, but that was very thoughtful to slow that back down. And since you did, I'd love to take an opportunity to say, people heard it from me, but I know there's a whole lot of people that may be listening to this that may be in the middle of that process. Where they're asking questions about their faith, or they're deconstructing certain parts of it, or maybe feeling, we hope a lot of people feel fulfilled by it, but there may be some that are maybe discouraged or wondering where they are, and am I in the right place? Am I doing okay? And often if they turn inward, the narrative is, we'll just fall in line and follow the guidelines and you'll be fine. But that never did really fit for me.
Same, yeah.
What might you say for people out there that may be in the middle of that process, for somebody that is either in it or has gone through it and maybe feeling a little more grounded in your faith now? How might you encourage people that are there?
Wow, that's such a big question. I think it's something that I'm definitely haven't figured out, and it's an ever-evolving process, right? Faith is a lifelong journey, I think, of deepening it and finding more layers, finding nuances. I think one thing I would say is like, God's not afraid of your questions. I think for so much of my life growing up, I felt like I had to perform for God, if that makes sense. And when I would pray, when I would, seek him out, it wasn't even an honest conversation, because I felt like I had to come into it, buttoning myself up and being a certain way, and almost afraid to even admit certain things to God, who knows everything, right? And every relationship is like this. Like, you're never going to go deeper. You're never going to actually progress until you're at least honest in that relationship. And so that was a big step for me, was just showing up from a place of honesty with my faith and asking those questions and being curious and facing the things that really scared me. And I wrote a song called Same God on this record that's all about kind of my journey with faith over the past couple years. And it's one of my favorite songs on the album. And the idea started with, I was just praying and talking to God. And obviously through this journey, like, my parents worry for me a lot, as parents do. I'm the eldest daughter. And I think that process of watching your kids grow up and having to transform your parenting a little bit. I know you're a parent too, so you can probably speak to this more than me, but like watching your kids grow up and watching your relationship change and evolve as they get older and more independent. I can't imagine how hard that must be. But I was praying and I was just like, God, like, remind them that I'm good. Like, and we're probably both praying at the same time about different things, but ultimately the same thing. And remind them that in the moments when they feel like they can't trust me, to remember to trust you. Because like, I'm ultimately your kid. Like, and I was like, I need to write a song about that. Like, that just felt so deep, and like it broke open. It unlocked something for me. Something clicked in my brain. And so I wrote Same God, and it's been really cool to see like that song already, even before it's out, like the stories I've heard. My co-producer played it for some people. And it was like a dad and his daughter, and the dad was like CEO, very stoic, like buttoned up type, probably never talks about his feelings or emotions. And he played that song for them, and they were both like in tears, sobbing, hugging each other at the end of it. And they got into this like deep conversation about faith and, you know, just probably something that they never have talked about before. And that's my hope for that song. And like this album ultimately is that it starts the hard conversations and maybe gives people the language that they need to have these conversations. And that ultimately it inspires empathy and curiosity about one another. I think when you're able to approach each other with that as the starting place, that's a game changer.
Yeah, well said. There was a lot there, but I would just echo, if it's okay, or double for what you said, in saying I too believe that without doubt, you really don't have faith. I think it's faith can be an antidote in some ways to doubt, but you've got to have one, I think, to really lean and feel the other and try it on. But I went through a season where I felt trapped by answers, and I never felt I could find an opening for questions. And you just, and that's what we hope to do here is I hope it's okay for me to say this about you, I don't want to overstep, but neither of us are experts in anything. We're all still students and trying to figure it out. I have a set of knowledge, and I think you've got a really cool set of knowledge for your craft. But we're two people trying to sort through and share our experience, strength, and hope that maybe something might be encouraging for you. And I really think that's what you did such a great job with your record. But anybody out there listening that may be stuck in any area, in your faith, in your life, in your relationships, in your vocation, curiosity is an incredibly powerful tool.
Yeah.
Not just about life and yourself, but about people. And if you haven't found the right people yet who you can ask an honest question to, one that maybe you were told early on, don't ask that.
Yeah.
If you haven't found the right people that could meet you with curiosity and said, say more about that, I want you to know that they're there.
Yeah.
Those people are absolutely there. And often the first person that needs to show up with the permissionship that would allow you to ask hard questions about who you are and who you're becoming is the person you're looking at in the mirror. And I feel like my journey started that way. And very much reflective to the same God is I could find all these nuances around how this set of rules is different. And I went church shopping for a while. I remember a long time ago, I hit all kinds of different denominations, and I was just fascinated by it. I was actually going to write a book in search of church and see if I could consolidate everything I found from all these different churches I visited in over a year and see if there was a through line. And there were a lot of different approaches. But the through line I think you wrote about in Same God, at the end of the day, we all can have a belief that's bigger than us.
Yeah.
And I don't want to overcomplicate it because even if you strip it back into some of my world and some circles that we support, anonymous type circles, it even can be pulled all the way back to being called a higher power. And that makes some people that I grew up with I'm also Christian very uncomfortable that we don't put a label and a name exactly as it is. But think of it as a bridge for people that are very curious and maybe even hurt by past experiences, but it opens a door to believe that maybe there's a power greater than me. And maybe I could lean into that power in order to ask hard questions and receive grace and empathy instead of judgment and criticism. And that is now my relationship with faith, my relationship with God. And ironically, it's turning into my relationship with everybody else.
I love that.
Which is incredible.
That's how it should be, right? I think real faith should make you love people better. It should make you more open. It should make you kinder. I think that's how you can tell whether it's like control or faith. I think that's a big differentiator. And also like a big shift for me was learning to like trust myself that God could speak to me just as much as he could speak to anybody else. I think it's so easy to outsource all of that and to think you have to go somewhere. And of course, there's people you can learn from and people that have dedicated their lives to being close to God and studying these things. But God, I think, can teach you the most beautiful things on a one-on-one personal basis. Like some of the most beautiful moments of my faith have been incredibly personal, something that I can't really explain to anybody else. And I think searching that out and knowing that that exists and trusting that inner voice is so important. And I think the right kind of teachers and the right kind of faith should inspire you to look for that within yourself as well, you know?
Well, how has that supported you? I think you articulated it so well, but how has it supported you? And maybe if you're open to talking about the challenges a little bit of the vocation that I think you said earlier, maybe it chose you. I don't know that you chose it, but it was almost like you had to come do this. And here you are. And I know enough about the industry, especially, being a female country music artist. And I know the deck in a lot of ways, it's low odds. It's very difficult. And I bet you've had success that some would dream of, and I'm sure you've had setbacks as well. But how do you feel like the narrative that you are sharing with us through this album, which I assume is got to be supporting you because it's a journey that you're on right now? How do you feel like that supported you with the ups and downs that this business can deliver?
Oh my gosh, that's such a great question. My relationship with why I'm an artist, why I'm a songwriter has really shifted, I think, over the past couple of years. I think when you get into something really young, when you develop a relationship with like your purpose, when you find that at a really young age, things can go awry along the way. And I think your relationship with whatever that thing is can be a little skewed. And for me, I kind of looked at it as a source of validation for a while, and it's partly my personality. I think I tend to be a people pleaser. Like I'm a Libra. I care what people think deeply.
That's a relatable laugh I'm giving you because my profession chose me, and primarily because I was a people pleaser, but I've had to work hard not to do that, but I kind of do it for a living weirdly.
It's kind of a gift when you learn how to
It can
use
be a
it.
Superpower. It's a good way to say it.
Exactly. Yeah. But it was my Achilles heel for so long and still can be if I'm not careful. And
say just one line or two about the burden side of that, because I think I agree it can be a gift, but talk about the burden side of what happens when you do that so too much.
Well, I think you lose when you're so good at being different versions of yourself for other people, like depending on the room, depending on the environment, depending on the person, you get good at, oh, I need to show this side. I need to be more this way. I need to laugh more. I need to be more quiet. When you're so good at gauging other people's emotion and the energy in the room and just fitting it and absorbing it, you kind of wear so many masks that you don't even know what your face looks like. It's like when you're not in relation to somebody else, when you're not around other people, it's like, what do I want? And I remember that's part of this industry too, is like when you're an artist, you get that question a lot, right? It's what do you want this to look like? What do you sound like? What do you have to say? Who are you? And at the beginning, being a little bit of a chameleon served me really well, but then you get to this place where it's about your voice and what you have to say. And I almost hit a wall of like, well, wait, what do I have to say? Like, who am I really when I don't need to be something for somebody else? And that's kind of the downside. I think the superpower is, as a creative, I think I'm very emotionally attuned and really good at picking up on people's energy and knowing how to meet them where they are. I think it comes in handy at live shows, like being able to just look at someone for 5 seconds and kind of get a feel for what they're going through, what they're carrying, how I can show up for them in that moment and connect with them. It translates into the writing room. Like it can definitely be a superpower, but when it's overactive,
it can be quite a burden.
Exactly. It sounds like you understand that too. Yeah.
Goodness. Yeah. It's burned me out more times than I can count. It can be quite exhausting. And I don't know that they're almost like the healthy version of, and this is, I started off this whole conversation by, if you know me, you know I'm drawn to creatives.
Yeah.
And primarily that's a big reason why. I think you summed it up a little better than maybe I did in the beginning, which is, in a way, you set yourself up to kind of download the world. And in order to download the world, you're having to read a room and be open and feel people's energy. You consume all that energy. You figure out how it might align with your story. And then ideally, you translate it lyrically into a narrative and a story for the rest of us to be able to consume. And that, ironically, it can come at a cost. And I very much like it can for us, because we deal in story as well. It's just we hear people's stories. We listen, we consume, we try to take parts of it and reflect back, and ideally help people unlock certain patterns that might be stuck. We're kind of both doing pattern recognition. You're doing it by songwriting, and we're doing it by trying to help people therapeutically. But often we get locked in those stories, and we download other people's vicarious and secondary stress. And so I've seen that a lot with creatives and songwriters, is they're feelers. They're attuned. They walk into a room and you can't not feel the energy, which, like you said, put you on a stage. It's a superpower. Yeah. You can make the entire room of 5,000 or 10,000 or 20,000 people feel like you're playing to one. And that's often when I hear most artists and creatives feel most alive. Yeah. And some people mistake that, and I'm not saying we're all not victim of that, because I speak a lot too, and I've gotten hooked by the applause at times where I felt like I didn't feel my worth enough and needed people to tell me that. Yeah. But really, that wasn't the part that made me feel so aligned with my craft. It was that I'm up there completely attuned to this entire group of people and trying to bring them into one focused message so that we can have an exchange. I think you guys do that as good as anybody I've ever seen. But the attunement really is just co-regulation. I know how to I've got enough time to be able to sit and process with you and pick up on your energy. I think that often your profession, we put a lot of pressure on performers to say, well, this is when you perform and this is when you're a human. And I don't even know that that's super realistic, to be able to turn performance off so quick, especially when everybody starts to make, when you get a little public, and you're pretty public. I was surfing around on some of your social stuff today. There's a lot of people. You have a lot of eyes and ears on what you do, and rightly so. You're great talent. But you've lost the ability for a lot of people to ever make a first impression again. Ugh,
yeah. Tell me about it.
Because people feel like they know who you are based on what they see, which makes it very difficult to take that hat off and be a human being. Is that something you relate to?
Oh, deeply. Yeah, deeply. Especially like when you start so young. Like I released my first song, I think, when I was like 17.
Didn't you start writing songs at like 9?
I was 9 when I wrote my first song, yeah. So like it's in a way like a little bit of an advantage, because you get time to explore yourself and work on your craft and hone all of that. But yeah, like you're saying, on the other hand, it can be a struggle too it's kind of like, well, you're figuring it out as you go, and people can go back and see all of these different versions of you and who you've been and kind of the process. And I honestly, people might be surprised by this. I've had a really tough relationship with being visible, with being seen. To be honest, it's kind of ironic, because being an artist, it's like that's kind of your job, is to be on display and to be seen and to be comfortable doing that. And I think the assumption is that you must love that. But for me, like that side of it is the biggest struggle for me a lot of times. And it's almost like what I've had to overcome in order to do what I feel like I'm called to do. I'm a songwriter first. I started writing songs when I was 9, and I did it out of necessity, like kind of like breathing. Like I felt like it was the only way I could process my emotions and communicate with the world. Like my parents, it's funny, to this day, my parents, sometimes the biggest look into my life they get is through the songs I write. And they kind of go into listening to new music I play for them that way. They're like, okay, we're gonna see what she's going through now. What's the update? And I think that's my why. It's not chasing the high of being famous or being on stage or having this big following and constantly being in front of people. Why I do it is to help distill these emotions and these experiences I've had into something that can be felt and heard and, digested in 3 minutes. And I think that's how I'm meant to communicate with the world. That's how I can be of greatest service to the world, I believe. So yeah, my relationship with the social side of it, with the being visible, is an ongoing thing that I feel like I have to work to learn to just show up as myself, if that makes sense.
Well, I got to tell you, that's not a surprise to me, but I bet it might be for some of our listeners. So I'm glad you said that, because I do know a lot of very public people who are incredibly shy and really introverted, and they don't like the attention culture that is their currency, but it's just kind of a part of the gig,
right,
in order to get eyes and ears on the truth and the message that you want to tell. But I think where I was going, and then where you just said it more eloquently, is ultimately, I think we're trying to chase congruence. Like what you see is who I am.
Yes.
Instead of here's this brand and here's this performance, and you don't really get to know the human behind it. This album, it really does that.
Oh,
you
wow,
can you can hear it. You can hear the truth in it. You can hear you in it.
That means so
yesterday,
much.
We were. I was out of town, and we were talking about that before. But my favorite part of the experience was I got to spend a few minutes with Rick Rubin, who it's my first time to meet him. We've been in overlapping circles for years, but never got a chance to meet him. If you ever listen to this, or if anybody ever sends it to you, I'm dying to have you on the podcast. I didn't have the nerve to ask you yesterday, Mr. Rubin, but one day I want you sitting across from me.
Wow.
Because it's obviously he's touched some of the greatest music we'll ever hear as a producer, but it's more his philosophy that he's generated on life that he started to tell with this book that came out a couple years ago. But I feel like here's a guy that I don't know his age, but I know he's in the fourth quarter maybe of his vocation and his career and in his life. And it still feels to me like you're in the first, maybe getting into the second. And you're saying some things like he did yesterday.
Oh, wow.
It was, and these are sound bites that won't surprise you if you follow his work, because you probably heard him as he got more visible the last 2 or 3 years and got really popular. I won't even do it justice because he talks so poetically, but he ultimately said, if you're creating this art for someone else, and you're creating it for the wrong reason. And create the art that you want to consume and that feels most true to you, and it will be most consumable by other people.
Yes. Dude, his book changed my life. I read it just like, honestly, going through this process, and it kind of was so serendipitous, the timing of it, because I think it was a great reminder. So many of, like you're saying, the sound bites and the just like truth bombs, I was like, I needed to hear that today. That's going to change the way I walk into the studio. And I think my perspective on all of that has changed so much. I'm now getting to the place where it's less about what great idea can I walk in with, what melody can I walk in with, how can I, almost like try to game it a little bit, right? And now the work is on, what do I need to do to allow myself to show up just from a pure place? Like, what can I do to get all of this chatter out of the way? What can I do to put down whatever this is I'm carrying and just show up as a clean slate, like ready to receive what's in the room? And that's very much his philosophy too. It's like you're a vessel. You're just like trying to tap into this source, whatever you think that is, and you're given a gift. And there have been so many rites, especially more recently as I've done some healing and, figured out how to listen to that inner voice, my inner compass more. And there have been some rites where I'm truly walk out and I'm like, I don't feel like I wrote a bit of that. Like, it felt like the words were just coming, and you almost like look back on the song, and as you play it back, you're like, you hear it differently. You're like, whoa, that's saying this. I didn't even realize we were saying that as we were writing it. And it truly is just about aligning yourself and positioning yourself and your spirit the way you need to show up to that space.
Yeah, and I think it's something that if you're listening to this, I think it doesn't matter if you're writing songs for a living or doing what I do or doing whatever it is you do. I do think there's a natural flow that we're all after. I don't know that you ever land there and fully get it all the time. But you described it, and your body language even shifted when you described it, which is when you described when the words just come through you.
Yeah.
And everything is at ease and everything's the way it's supposed to be. And I believe that happens when we get anchored in our why, when we start to heal some of the parts that may be getting in the way and making us maybe perform a little bit more than being congruent with who we are. And if you really think about counseling and therapy or coaching, it's a whole lot of ways to get clear on your why. Why am I showing up in the world? Why do I show up in my vocation? Who am I? And what do I want to say to the world? And that's why whenever I consume art like I did yours, I get really excited because it doesn't, to me, I'm such a music nerd, it doesn't even matter the genre. If it's true and I feel it's true, I'm into it.
Yeah.
And I want to hear it. And for you to accomplish that with this record so early in your career, I got to say hats off.
Thank you. Wow.
You mentioned healing. You did some healing.
Yeah.
And you mentioned earlier that songwriting has always been your form of therapy until I think you said you did a little therapy, but say more about healing. What's the healing journey looked like for you?
Whoa. I mean, it sounds cliche. I think and I'll dig more into it, but it truly was just learning how to love myself well. I think love for most of my life felt really conditional. And part of that's on me too. Like, I don't know where I picked up this idea. I think in therapy, I've dug back into a lot of moments in my childhood where, some of these beliefs get locked in there somewhere. But I felt like I needed to perform to be loved. I needed to play this certain role. I needed to show up this certain way. And I didn't feel worthy of love just for existing, right? It was always like, I need to get better grades. I need to do more. I need to be more successful. I need to be kinder, more empathetic, whatever it was. So I think that was a big part of the healing, was just like actually to my core going, you're worthy just because you exist. And that's so hard to do, right? It sounds so cliche, but as humans, we see conditional love all around us. Like, that's most of what exists in the world is conditional love. And validation it's like a drug. We just, like, at least for me, like, constantly seeking that in places just so you can, like, go to bed at night and feel like fulfilled. But ultimately, like, that well is always going to run dry, And I think I reached a point like that with, even 20 something, and the little success that brought me of going like, okay, I'm starting to see some of these wins. I'm starting to see some of the things that I've worked for my whole life happening, and I still don't feel validated. I still don't feel worthy of love. And I think that was a massive red flag for me. And I looked back at my relationships too. I've had some really, really horrible toxic relationships. And it makes sense now. Like, I think it's more than just, I have bad taste or, missing red flags. I think I thought that's what I thought I deserved, was that kind of love. And it wasn't until I learned to just go, you don't need to be anything. You don't need to do anything to be loved. You're loved just because you exist. And showing up from that place, everything around you starts to change.
Come on.
Yeah.
I feel like we could just leave the whole thing right there with what you just said. That's some serious wisdom. That was really well said.
It's it's much more complicated than it sounds too, right? Like, people are like, love yourself first. And it's easy to say, but much, much harder to do. And just talking about that brought up too, like, I dug into some EMDR therapy with my therapist, and that was
powerful.
Wow. I mean, we had to hit pause on it too, because, tour started and all this stuff. And I was like, I can't afford to be crashing out of nowhere 3 times a week,
Bilateral stimulation over here. Let's get to touring.
You almost have to schedule it, right? So one of the memories that came up for me in therapy was, back from when I was like, I think I was probably 4 years old. And I think it really shaped my relationship with performing. Being the first grandchild, my granddad is just this character, right? Boisterous, center of attention. Like, he's an incredible person. I love him so much, but he is who he is. And when we'd go out to restaurants or we'd meet people, I was like, he would teach me these things, these songs, these verses, and just be like, Alana, sing a song for everybody. Literally put me on top of the table in the middle of a busy restaurant. Wow. And be like, this is my granddaughter, everybody. She's going to sing Amazing Grace, whatever the song was. And I had a vivid memory of like a couple of those moments during EMDR that came up, and I just like broke down into tears. And I think what I learned through unpacking that was I had developed this relationship with performing that was, I abandoned myself. There was a fear associated with that 4-year-old version of me getting put up on the table going, I don't have any agency. I just need to put on this performance. And, it was almost like not doing it for the joy of doing it, but doing it for someone else. And I think that unknowingly shaped a lot of the way I approached my career and performing and writing. And that's the beauty of therapy, is like I was able to go back into those little moments that I probably would have never remembered and let those things go and go like, you're safe, you're loved, you don't need to be anything for anybody, and you don't have to carry that anymore. And now I'm able to show up and from a much more embodied place of going like, you don't need to perform. You're doing this because it's your gift and you want to connect with people, and you're doing it for the love of doing it, because that's your gift to the world. So,
but you can feel that in the music. And you said you had a distinctive moment as you were talking about the healing journey, where you almost took us through a visual timeline of like, here's a few instances that I downloaded that impacted me in a certain way that I had to rethink and kind of rewrite that narrative so that I could get more comfortable being who I truly am. But right out of the gate, I think it was probably a minute into you reflecting on that, where you said, and some of that was on me. Somewhere along the way, I downloaded this and it made me think of this. And God, if you're listening to this, I want you to hear that. It's one of the most important things I think we can do when we start to take the reins of our own story, which is we put down the microscope on our problems and on other people that might have helped create those problems, and we pick up the mirror and realize we are the person that can make the changes we seek.
Yes.
You do have the agency to make those changes. And frankly, we're accountable to make them. It doesn't mean that we don't need to go grieve certain parts of our story. But I love that subtle nuance you put in there, because you're like, I think when we say it, we loosen the hold of what we can feel victimized by. And it's not to shortchange the victim story. So many of us, and I'm a victim of some things too, have a right to try that shoe on, and we need to understand it and be able to navigate it. But ultimately, at some point, we turn a corner and realize I have some accountability to make this change. And I thought you articulated that really well. I think it could be encouraging for a lot of people to hear, but you use the word embodied. And I think this project kind of speaks to that. When you talked about that little girl, and it's important, I think, sometimes in our work to go back and find defining little moments. And what you do when you find them, like you identified that as like, here's a defining moment, or maybe a thing that would make a timeline. Yeah. Like I was impressioned or imprinted by one of these moments. You start to not judge it as much. You just see it as this was a thing that it impacted me. And until I look back and be like, that's not the way I want to show up. I don't have to do this for attention or applause. I get to do it, not because I have to. I think you articulately said, because I get to. Yeah. So therefore it doesn't be like, oh, Grandpa did a bad thing.
Right.
It was, that just was a thing that happened in my life that now I can learn from and move forward in a more embodied and a more congruent and a more grounded way. You thoughtfully added the little girl's voice onto the record.
I did, yeah. In the intro.
That's a really cool choice. Got my attention right away.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, so this album is special, I feel like, because I got to kind of curate it from start to finish. When I released 20-something, maybe people don't know this, I was literally still in the studio working on parts of it as some of it was already out. And it was kind of this like like, fixing the car while it's on the road type thing. We're trying to finish it up as it's going. But with this record, I was able to have all of it done, the artwork done, like just really be able to add in these Easter eggs. And I love that as a creative. Those are the albums that made me want to be an artist and a songwriter. So it was really fun to go there. But yeah, the intro starts off with a little CD player click, which is how I listened to music as a kid. Like I had this little portable CD player and put my headphones on, just lay on my bedroom floor and get lost in it. And my grandma found that CD player somehow in the back of the attic and sent it to me, and I was able to like actually sample that CD player and like start the record. And then it goes into, I found through this process, I was going through a lot of old video footage. And it was actually really like beautiful and healing to do. And I'm grateful my parents had the camera up so much growing up. And one of the videos I found was it's actually me and my oldest brother, Jaden. We're 2 years apart and we're like besties growing up. We still are. We're still super close. And it's a video of me and my brother singing this old hymn, All Things Bright and Beautiful. And like we're doing these little hand motions as we're going, probably learned it in Sunday school or church or something. And my mom, when we finished the song on the other side of the camera, goes, "Oh, what other songs do y'all know?" And then it goes into this intro and the rest of the record. So it's kind of a nod to like, at the time, there weren't many other songs I knew. That was my, I was reciting the Bible verses and singing the hymns, singing the songs. And I didn't really even know at that age what I was saying, what I was singing, these verses I was quoting. And I think there's something in that too of like, reciting these things from memory before you even know the significance of what it is. Like in a way that's beautiful. I can still recall these verses from memory, but I've almost had to go back and like relearn them in a way and go, what's it actually saying? Like, what does this mean? What have I been singing my whole life, But it felt like a great way to just like set the scene for the record. And like you said, yeah, like nod to that inner child that showed up to make this music.
It's a creative, cool way to start. It's just, it's nostalgic. It takes all of us back into a younger part of ourselves. But then the entire record is a good story for all of us to consume because it's really just someone really trying to tell the truth about who they are and who they're becoming. And I think we all could benefit from it. But I think about it too as a parent, how important it is. Because before I became a parent, I was trying to work out my story to live a better life. And now I'm trying to continue to work out my story because I've got way more I'm responsible for. And I care as much about these little lives that I'm trying to bring along as I am the one that I'm living. I think this is a great album for parents to listen to. Did you have that in mind when you wrote it?
Absolutely. I'm so close to my parents. Like obviously they had me when they were 20. So growing up, it was almost like they're still so young. And it's almost like we're kind of growing up together in a way. And that can be, there's a lot of great things about that, but there's also some challenges too. I think when you have a kid at 20, you just have no time to discover yourself and to do the work that I've done over the past couple of years. I'm 25 and I'm just now doing that. And when I wrote Note to Self, actually, it's very much my story. Probably the most autobiographical song I've written, but I also kind of had my mom in mind when I was writing that song. And without getting too deep into it, I mean, she had a tough childhood as well. Like she went through a lot of trauma in her own right and things that she still carries. And as I've gotten older, we've been able to talk and like actually go into depth about some of these things. And some of it took me sharing with her first, like some of the struggles that I went through when I was a kid. I opened up to her about an eating disorder that I had when I was 17, 18, 19 that I couldn't talk to her about then. But opening up about some of that stuff allowed us to have these conversations where it was like an empathetic, like Me Too kind of moment.
Wow.
Where we were able to see each other. And
what's mom's name?
Shannon.
Honoring Shannon with Note to Self.
She's the best. I love my mama so much. She just... I wouldn't be the woman I am today without her.
Yeah, well done, Shannon. You've encouraged all of us today.
But I played her this song and, when it finished, she was in tears and I was like scared. I was like, is she mad? Is she like, how's she going to react to this? And I was like, how does it feel to hear that? And she said, is that your story or mine? And And that hit me so hard because I had written my story in Note to Self, but every single line of that song could have been true for her too. And I think it just speaks to that. To me is when like the concept of generational trauma really clicked.
Come on.
It's like, that's an example of she didn't get the time to heal. She never had the tools. And with unintentionally, like I ended up feeling some of that too as I grew up. And I think it's just an opportunity for all of us to, like you said earlier, have agency and own the parts of our healing that we need to do, and to not get caught in like being a victim, but just like you can choose to heal and to show up better for yourself and for the people around you.
Well, I think you've written a permission slip for a lot of us. And as a mentor of mine says to me years ago, and I never forgot it, she says, never too late to have a happy childhood.
Aww.
You get to go back and reconcile and rewrite whatever stories you might have and still live into the kid you deserve to be at that age.
That's so beautiful.
I was very touched. Actually, on the way in, I was coming through your album again, and I got to the end, and I was touched because just like you do with your presence, I think you have this interesting way of slowing everything down.
Oh,
like you've got a calm disposition, got lots of wisdom, especially for your age. It's been just delightful. It's gone by super fast. I wish we had more time, and maybe we'll have more time down the road.
I hope so.
When you get another project, we'd love for you to keep us in mind, because I think it's going to be super encouraging for lots of people to hear. I was very touched by a letter that you shared at the end. And I thought that could be a nice way to close us out today, if you'd be okay with it. Just kind of share that with everybody that might be listening.
I'd love to. Yeah. Obviously the album's called I Hope This Helps. And as I was, got the first couple of mixes back, was listening to the track list, I just felt it on my heart that I wanted to end with almost like just some statements, some things to leave whoever was listening with, of just, things I've learned in my hopes for this record. And there's, I believe, 14 statements, and each of them corresponds to like the songs in track list order on the record.
Come on.
So yeah,
You're a true music nerd, aren't you?
I am a nerd. I
love
am a nerd. All right.
So if you could just sit down for a minute, take a deep breath. If you're in a spot where you can kind of close your eyes, just drink this in. I got an opportunity earlier.
I hope the child within you finds peace with you. I hope the shadows remind you that the light is still there. I hope you find solace in tears and let them fall on someone else's skin. I hope you experience how it feels for another's tears to fall on yours. I hope you learn to let go with tenderness and to hold on with conviction. I hope you ask the questions that keep you up at night, even when you're afraid of the answers. I hope you hold on to faith fiercely. I hope you stop waiting for permission to love yourself, to love someone else. I hope you realize true love will never ask you to be small. I hope you choose yourself again and again until it feels like breathing. And when the storm finally passes, I hope you find the peace you always hoped was there. I hope you have the courage to be known, even when it feels safer to be alone. I hope you let go of who you thought you had to be to make space for who you were always meant to be. I hope you dive in, even when you can't see the bottom. I hope you realize you were never going to drown. And more than anything, I hope you know that you were never alone.
Alana Springsteen, what a pleasure. Beautiful, poetic words, prophetic words. It's been a delight.
Thank you. I love this conversation so much. Truly, thank you for your perspective and just for going there with me, going so deep. I love it. Absolutely. I can't wait for people to get their hands on the project, which they can find it everywhere. I know, soon. And and you're really fun to watch on socials too. So definitely follow along on Instagram. I'm assuming is Instagram getting too old? No, it's still very relevant. It's so cool. Right? Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, all the things. TikTok and Instagram is where you spend a lot of time? Yeah, a lot of time. Yep. Okay, YouTube good. Shorts, all that. YouTube. Yeah. Okay, great. Yeah, we'll follow along. I'm excited for you to be in this town. I think the town needs more people with a soul like you. Oh, thank you. And so I hope you'll stick around and continue to bless us with your gifts. Well, I need Nashville too, so thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, enjoyed it. That's Human School. Keep showing up, keep getting honest. If you liked this episode and if it was beneficial, if you don't mind leaving us a review, that would really help us get more eyes and ears on our episode so we can encourage more people. I'm Miles Ed Cox, and I'll see you next time.